Hello,
Hello.
everybody. Welcome, welcome.
How's it going?
Cut the music away from you there. Danny's just going to take a listen and make sure our audio is not super scuffed or something. How do we sound, Danny? What do you got?
It's still music playing. We'll have to give it a
Yeah,
minute.
yeah. We'll have to let it catch up to us coming live here.
Might be an ad, but
I don't
oh,
think so.
there
Nope.
we are.
I hear it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just give it a listen here. I'm just going to talk a few times and see how it sounds. Isaac sounds good.
Of course I sound good. What the hell?
Okay. I'm going to put the microphone away from my voice a little bit. Okay, how do I sound now? I'm going to talk a little bit more. Just give me a second here. Almost caught up. Hello?
Hello.
Okay, here we are. Okay, we're pretty good.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
For those anybody curious why we're doing this, we're not at our usual mic setup. I am isolating because me and the girlfriend had COVID. I am pretty well symptom free. I'm just giving it a few extra days to make sure I don't get anybody sick. So I'm home with my blue snowball mic, and we don't have decent cameras for this, so it's going to be mostly just audio. And we're just doing a little like chatting stream. I think the idea is to talk. Well, Danny, if you want to give the idea, I think you've got a better handle
Yeah,
on
I
it than me.
think this, if it works out, this is going to kind of be like an adventure talks kind of segment, where we just kind of talk about things about D&D, things we're excited about. If it works out, that it ends up being a more regular kind of monthly or like semi-monthly thing. But I guess bi-monthly would be the correct term there. That's kind of what we're thinking if it works out. But just random things like get involved with the viewers a little bit, talk with you guys. Something that I'm really excited about would be to have like polls during these things, doing some character builds, building NPCs, talking about world building, talking about maybe some of the concepts and stuff that comes up in D&D that don't get talked all the time about. So like some things that people might have some issue with or may push them away from D&D, like stronger type themed things in D&D, like maybe like a sex or um, religion or things like that,
Yeah,
that come up in D&D that maybe are more dicey, that have caused problems. Like just touching on those things and talking about how we navigate them or how they could be navigated and how they could actually bring to your game without like taking from it.
yeah, lots of stuff to chat about. I mean, we had talked that last session. It's not posted on YouTube yet, but we had a bit of like a tense moment with the players where there was some like real world feelings getting involved, and it kind of got mentioned. They're like, hey, we chatted about this and we said maybe we would like go into more detail on this, which I think would be interesting to do. I mean, it's always good to see somebody handle those for like if it comes up at your table. And I've learned a few lessons the hard way with a few groups. I've lost some players to like silly mistakes or like not jumping on problems quick enough and like figuring they'd resolve themselves. So I have some idea, some experience with that, more than I'd like to.
Yeah. And just like when to let it elaborate and when to draw the line, and then also too it's like how to navigate it and how to work with your players and your DM to just be like, okay, yeah, this happened and we're okay, and understanding that we can always move back and we are the players and we
Yeah.
can create what we want to create.
Well, judging by how we're starting, do you want to get into that? And we'll start off with that because
Yeah, like
that's still pretty fresh in my mind.
yeah, so feel free to like ask questions in the chat. We're going to be very active with you guys there. That actually helps us a lot, other than I just talking at you guys. So I don't know if there's anybody watching right now, but feel free to ask questions, and Isaac will be reading them and that kind of thing because I can't.
Yeah, I
So,
got the chat open.
but yeah,
Okay, so a little bit of setup then. So what the thing was we had last
world
session.
building.
Well, it's. I mean, we're talking
Oh,
about.
sorry.
Unless you want to talk about something else, that was kind of my
No,
question.
yeah, go ahead.
we had the players going up against a group of assassins, which were very scary. You know, they could do a lot of damage very fast, and they were very good at keeping tabs on the party. And the party had a lot going on, and were not doing a great job at keeping themselves from being kept tabs on.
Rolled shitty.
Not even. Like, I mean, you guys had a lot of stuff going on and weren't worrying about it too much. Like, you were splitting up and going different places, that's not a detriment or anything. It makes like scary people scarier, right?
Yeah.
They're able to really freely and effectively do what they're good at, which is already terrifying, which is like know where you are and hurt you when you're at your weakest or you're most separated. And then we had Yaisel be visited by some shapeshifters who stole her form and then used it without her knowledge to trick Lorelei out of where she was and kidnap her. And there's a whole and I knew with them having this plan, you'll kind of get a sense for when you're getting into choppy waters, right? I knew this was delicate territory. I was very ready to like stop the game and have a player chat, and we did just that during our break. Before we dive too much into it, what was your experience as Barian of it? Like, as it was happening, and then when we were chatting about it after.
Very much like I saw it coming, and I not until like you all of a sudden you were like, Yaisel's it knocks at Lorelei's door. I'm like, in my head I was like, nobody knows Lorelei was here, and I was like, oh, okay, something's happening. But it fit right in because for the last like 4 or 5 episodes, there's been some dissent in the party. There's been the thing with Yaisel not trusting outsiders, and then not going to Barian's tower because of the king, and then it's been kind of splitting the group up, so we've been a lot more separated. So it totally fit in that something like this could happen. I think once I saw the whole thing happen where Lorelei got rolled out, and then it just kind of happened, and it was like, yeah, this is a thing, no rolls. That's where I saw Alex and Lorelei. He kind of had like a little thing about it, and I was like, oh, okay. I just let it be because I'm like, it makes sense the way it happened. But I also could see where he was coming from. He's like, oh, so this just happens. You know what I mean?
No, that wasn't something Alex said. Like he when I talked to him about it, he even said like there had been mention of like, does he get an insight check or something? And he had said like Lorelei's like not in the state for that at all. So I don't.
He played along with it well.
Yeah, I don't remember there being anything for him there around that. The thing for Alex that came up when we chatted as a group was like it can be kind of hard to go out on a limb and trust your DM sometimes. Like I've played with Alex a fair bit, so he knows me, and I was cashing in on some of that trust where it's like the player's out of his hands, and depending on what the party does, and judging by the predilection of these assassins, like it's very real that his character just dies and he has very little agency in it. And also with how scary the people had been, like it was just like they always knew where the party was, and were ready to capitalize on it, and they felt invincible was one of the things he said. So he's looking at the situation where one of his characters is captured by these people that don't feel fightable. And one of the things that came up in the conversation with him was like, okay, but they are fightable. Like Dungeon Master, 2-player, these guys are fightable. I mean, you've been fighting them in the worst arena for you and the best for them, which is like you guys separated and them prepared and trying to assassinate or capture you.
Yeah, totally.
But like they're super like roll up onable, which you guys did. Like you went to their house. The whole reason they were after Lorelei was leverage against how powerful you guys are and the fact that you know where to find them. And that helped a lot. Like that made a big difference for Alex's experience of it. And I think like the thing for me there, like the takeaway is like, it's great to have surprises and to have tension in your players with like not knowing what's going to happen next. And there's also a point where it's like this secret isn't worth, like, the like meta game knowledge isn't worth keeping from them if it ruins their experience. There's, like, you know, good tension, not good tension, and Alex was not sitting in good tension there, and it was all it took to make that, like, bearable and interesting was like, no, this is handleable. Like, your character doesn't know that, but, like, you have my word on that. And I'm not saying it will be handled and everything will go swimmingly, but it is within your capabilities.
Yeah, and this was where I saw it. Like, I saw it as like a good opportunity. But if I was Alex, and I think, like, if Alex is a player, is Lorelai is she just receiving retribution from their anger at us, and is she just nuked, and this is a consequence of roleplay and character decision, or is something happening here, and is Lorelai being used as a plot point to further a story? And I think that's where it comes up: is my character feeling retribution for character decisions between the party, or is it, do I just have to trust the DM that this is a plot point and he's using my character as a way to further the story?
Yeah, that is an interesting balance of it, right? Like, it was the trust thing I've mentioned twice now, and it was something Alex brought up,
which is good,
specifically, like, because we went on break, and we were chatting, and everyone was tense, and there was, like, emotions abound, and so I just immediately wanted to get it, like, out in the air, talked about, which was pretty much how I led into it, was like, hey, let's, like, talk about this. And I kind of led that, like, I tend to lead those conversations with pretty blanket assurances of, like, hey, like, we totally control the game. Which is a little counter to how I run D&D. I really like D&D being about choices and the consequences of it, and I love how it can take you places you never expected, and I'm very open to that. But when it comes to, like, my players having fun and being comfortable, I'm totally willing to be like, we can retcon whatever we want that we can, like, agree on, and we can also, like, if we have to force a story to go a certain way, let's do it if that's what makes people have fun.
Yeah, because I totally agree. In the end, it's about does someone feel happy, content, and fulfilled when they play D&D, and understanding that as a player and as a DM, sometimes there's going to be times of discontent and times of uncomfortability, but overall that will lead to a sense of satisfaction and a sense of fulfillment in what you're doing. Which is absolutely, I'm about that too.
Something that came up with Runa's side of it, and I don't want to talk for her, and I'll try my best not to, but like, there was a fair bit of emotion there around that, and from what I understood, like, a feeling of, like, she'd made a mistake, and, like, done something stupid as a player, like being in character was something stupid, and it was, like, her fault. And I was like, no, like, these are shapeshifters. Like, this is what's scary about shapeshifters. And a big part of that was just, like, letting her know that she hadn't done anything wrong. Like, this was how things had turned out, and her character did the best they could with what was going on. And that it was, like, you know, part of the fun of D&D is to be uncomfortable sometimes. Like, one of the things I said were specifically some of my most memorable, like, high-level D&D play was combats where I was the cleric and I didn't know if we were going to make it through this. And it was, like, super tense. It was not comfortable, but it was super memorable and, like, super fun at the end of it, which is something we kind of give ourselves over to when we play a game like D&D. And, you know, that same line we talked about where it's like, you know, there's a point where it's not memorable and fun, uncomfortable, where it's like, no, like, this is making me not want to play. This is making the game not fun. And I'm willing there to sit down and negotiate. Like, what does it look like? What do we have to retcon something? Do we have to, like one of the things I offered was, like, hey, so one of the things that came up was, like, would Lorelai be able to forgive Yazel? Because Lorelai didn't pick up on the clue I was giving when I talked about the person's face making, like, an unnatural expression. I meant that to be, like, a really clear signal this isn't Yazel, and it just kind of, like, flew past Alex a little bit. And I said, like, no, Lorelai would know. Like she saw Yazel's face do something Yazel's face never does. Like, it would be pretty clear this is somebody else, which changed the whole thing for him. Like, that was a huge thing where he's like, okay, because they were sitting in, like, Lorelai, would, if she didn't realize this wasn't Yazel, even finding out after, probably wouldn't be able to trust Yazel without Yazel making some pretty big strides. And Runa being at like, well, Yazel's not in a position where she's going to do any of that. And I was like, before we figured out that he had missed that cue, I was like, okay, well, so what needs to happen? Like, okay, so say neither of the characters are going to be willing to do something. Like, I can make a story element happen that puts them in danger together and they have to work together. Like, maybe Yazel has to rescue Lorelei from some, like, demi-prison that the outsiders are keeping her in, that only she can get into as a shadow monk. Or something. Like, there's so much available to you if you're, like, gonna write it. Right, where it's like,
there's a lot.
We've found ourselves in an impasse, and we can write a solution if that's what required. If the game's not going to resolve itself, we can write a solution here.
Yeah, and so two points there on what you're saying, which brings it up, is that the outcome, the journey of how we get somewhere, and the outcome of the game is much more important than sticking to the plot or the content. Sometimes it's like, okay, so this would have happened if we were playing a George R. Martin style D&D, and this person ran into this, and it's like
reality.
Okay,
Simulator 2017.
It probably would have killed you in reality, but you know what? We're gonna pull it back because it's not fun. You know what I mean? It's like in this game, Kat Stark doesn't die. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And there's a balance to that, right? Like, I mean,
there totally.
Especially me. One of the things I've noticed is I really like old style D&D. We even played a whole like bi-weekly session of what we called Brutal D&D, which was like we took 5e and turned it into like first edition as best we could. And it didn't work terrific. It was good fun. But there's a lot of stuff that doesn't like change well. But I love first edition stuff where it's like, you know, you weren't really heroes. Like your characters died. You kind of expected it. You got a little less attached to your characters. And you could do a lot of cool stuff like permanent mind control and whatnot. But like, you know, you also had to deal with enemies like Finger of Death just straight up killed you on a bad save. I love the tension of that. And it's not like a super common thing for players.
It's an interesting concept and setting.
Yeah.
I think
the balance I'm getting to is I like that element of D&D maybe a little more than most, but there's definitely a fun element of D&D of not knowing what's going to happen next, and that your characters like really can die.
It has to be there.
Yeah, so I'm by no means saying like, you know, write everything out just because it gets uncomfortable, but there are notes like that where what would make me willing to like write out something like that and decide how it ends is because we're dealing with where the players kind of lost agency. Like the enemies did something clever and sneaky, and it kind of got pinned on the players, and like they didn't have an incredible, like Yazel did what she could there, sent a person with them, tried not to get her bar massacred, and so in moments like that, it's kind of, you've got to protect your players as a DM. Like they put a lot of trust in you.
Yeah.
The best way to play D&D is to like try and feel what your character is feeling, and you can't do that if you can't trust your DM to protect you.
Yeah, and that just comes from play and I think conversation. I think the other thing that really helps that happen, and just from watching other DMs and having played myself, I think is like having where Yazel came up to Lorelei and like having that breakdown and having that snippet of conversation or moment and making it just like the cue. Like, and Yazel turns with a malicious grin that you've never seen on her face before, and like making it extremely bluntly obvious without like saying, "Yeah, it's a doppelganger."
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that the character's like, "Oh fuck, something is going on here," instead of being like, Yazel backstabbed me.
Yeah. Well, and that was like the big thing too, right? Because the thing I never got to with that was we were talking about like, how do we need to write this so that the party can stay together? And then that was when Alex mentioned, he's like, well, like Lorelei is not gonna be able to trust her, like, and I'm like, okay, but Lorelei knew it was like it was a shapeshifter. He's like, no, she didn't. And I was like, okay, here's the cue. This is what I meant it to mean, and that solved the whole thing. We didn't end up writing the ending to that. He was like, no, that changes it, and I was like, okay, great. Also, we've got Forested Druid on here. And he
hi.
Popped on. Hello, welcome. He said, I'm saying he. They said it makes the party to stay vigilant and careful. And then Alex popped on and said, "Welcome to Forest of Druid." And they said,
well, welcome to you too.
Unless you have a very pragmatic party, you don't really have to worry about them too much. And then they said hi to Alex. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That I think that's really what we were touching on, is like you do want D&D to still be uncertain. And you do want your party to have to learn to be a little vigilant. They need to be able to trust you, like we said, especially in moments where their agency gets taken out of it. And then, if somebody dies because the DM decided something and a roll went poor, it's much less fun. And it might happen now and again and could still be interesting, but it's definitely not something I want to make a habit out of. But
and
the D&D gets bad if it's, you might as well read a book.
And it's something like that is nice to happen though once in a while, and it's towing the line between them trusting the DM for things to happen, and then for them to having that healthy, I want to say fear, that healthy vigilance of like, okay, yep, these things have happened, so we're like aware of them, and these might change slightly how my character acts without breeding the infighting and the backdooring. It's a fine line.
Everybody's heard of the groups that don't trust their DM, right? Like, you just end up with a table full of people who don't play characters anymore. They play them, like trying to survive as a paladin. It's like, all of their characters carry a 10-foot pole around, and they won't walk out their house without checking for traps. Everybody wants a cloak of eye, and it's trust is a big thing.
We don't go anywhere without Death Ward.
Yeah, trust is a big thing. Forster Druid said, yeah, exactly. Me and my party is freaking traumatized by kobolds. Yeah, exactly. Like, and that's exactly it. Like, is it fun? Do you still trust your DM? And it's like, this party is traumatized by kobolds, and that becomes an interesting, like, story note for the party, a thing that comes up? Or is it like, no, like, all of my characters are now going to be wary of kobolds because I don't trust them anymore?
Did it injure the character or did it injure the player?
Yeah.
So it's like, if it's injured the character, great. We had a group, and this was back in 3.5, and we, at a low level, I believe it was level 2, had a run-in with goblins, almost TPK'd. Multiple times. 3 times we tried to leave town, 3 times we almost got killed by goblins.
Right.
After that point on, it was almost a genocidal zeal of how much the party hated goblins. Slaughter on site. It would be like, oh, the treasure's over there in that hallway over there. Well, there's goblins to the left. We'll be back. Like,
the door's closing. You'll never be able to get that treasure. We know what we have to do.
Yeah. We know they have the key and they're hiding it because that's what they are. Sneaky and bastard.
I'm picturing you guys being like Cyanor to the treasure. Like, fuck it. It's gone forever. It's the treasure of the goblins, and we've got to kill those goblins.
Yeah, it's a trap.
Yeah.
So it's that's cool, and kobolds are fun.
Yeah, I think I've got one of my Tuesday parties is currently building an army of kobolds, which is super fun. They like subjugated some kobolds in a dungeon, and then now their like go-to when meeting kobolds is like show their superiority, like trash them pretty good without killing them, and then like offer them to come work for them, and it's pretty funny.
And it's cool because you can. I'll just drop this thing quick. Is we had a wizard who could do minor illusion very, very well.
Yeah,
and he minor illusioned a dragon. And but just its head, right? So its head was poking out of a cave, and he minor illusioned it, and then he basically got this group of kobolds to worship his minor illusion dragon head.
Yeah,
and so it was a fun one.
Forster Druid says, I mean, they have their priority, and then fealty by combat. That is a very good description of what that party does. Yeah. So
yes,
I mean,
exactly.
To wrap up this note of our chat, like the takeaway, for me, is be willing to chat with your party, and in my experience, it's always better, especially when you're going into hairy water, like jump on it and be like, hey, this is like an out of character combat, this is an out of character chat, what's going on, like get to the bottom of it. I've had people where I tried to do that and I didn't press it enough and they just didn't show up to my table again. And I thought I had done like a good job of getting on it. Shay says you guys know it's Monday, right?
Yes, it's Monday. This is extra.
Yeah, we're doing a little talk show.
Adventure
we're just talking about some stuff we like about D&D and about our game. Alex says it's really easy to get trapped in an idea that hasn't happened and doesn't need to happen.
So
Uh,
actually, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, we're just doing something new here, and we'll see how it works out. Something else I kind of wanted to talk just about, like world building and stuff, and these conversations is
Yeah.
something that come up is death and how death is okay, and how death in normally in fifth edition is very um, not a thing
Fucking
as
difficult.
much, and
So
how
hard
to
to kill
make it,
party.
but how to make it more, but not even killing party. And so, as a DM, because I've been thinking about how to make death meaningful, and I think one of the things that cheapens death for people is the reason or how it happened. And I think a lot of people would be more okay with, even if they get resurrected or revived or something, is as a DM, like I thought about this. Say a character goes down, and then it's like, and you step out and you take a even if it's just like a couple minutes, and you get everybody to leave, or even if they stay at the table, and you basically say, okay, your character wakes up in a dark room, and he's in a wooden chair, and standing in front of him is a man with dark hair, and he has tattoos across his face that look like the sea breaking across in waves, and they're moving across, and he has starlit eyes, and he realizes that this is some type of angel of death or something, and then giving the angel to ask the player a question to basically explain himself of like what
You told me
drove
about
you
this.
to get here, what giving them a time to like have some closure.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
Have their final say. Tell their story.
yes, and I
Yeah.
think that is something that could really change somebody's perspective about death in D&D and validate it and makes them to be, you know what, even if this character doesn't come back and they don't manage to get me through, this character's done what he did, he had his say, and he's justified.
Yeah.
I'm okay to roll on.
Yeah. Okay, just to step away and talk about what we've got in chat. So Alex had said it's really easy to get trapped in an idea that hasn't happened, doesn't need to happen. I'm not sure if I know what he means by that, but we've had some conversation. I'm pretty sure he's talking about, like, sometimes you have a plan for your character, and it's really easy to get stuck with that and decide that's what the character would do, or
Yeah.
to try to like force a situation. And I agree, it's an easy trap to fall into, and it's something you do as a DM is try to quietly talk people off of the hills they want to die on sometimes. And then
Yeah.
Forested Druid said, "Be willing to put your party in somewhat danger, or put them in a surprise. You're surrounded by kobolds now situation." Yeah, it's. I think my final piece of advice on that as a DM is you're going to find yourself in situations where by something you've planned or done, or by something that's happened with the party, you're in hot water, and you'll have to deal with it, and it'll be a test, and it'll be a opportunity for you to practice how good you are at keeping your players trust and in dealing with hairy situations. And then you'll have situations like this where I knew I was going into it. I knew what I was getting into. I knew it was going to be hot water. I was ready for it. And just like be willing to go into what you think you're ready for.
Yeah, that's good.
Don't push it, and because it is delicate. Be willing to throw it at them, but also be willing to like, that sounds like a
Roll
cool
with the
encounter, but I don't
punches.
know if I'm ready to handle the fallout there.
Yeah. Any other comments?
Yeah, Forster Druid said, "Oh yeah, my DM has the same idea. They have a lady in a black robe, and she has a lantern to guide the dead souls to the afterlife. And
Oh,
talk
that's
to
so
them."
cool.
And I think it's a really good touch to death for characters. Yeah, I agree. I like the idea. I think you've noticed in my games that like death isn't quite the end, right? Like with Barian dying, and there being that like angel of mercy waiting for you, and that like Fey spirit waiting for you as
Yeah.
well. But I haven't specifically put in something like that where it's like like what's your swan song?
Yeah.
I agree. I think that is a really good touch for characters.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
And
My experience with character death, and I don't know if it's just because I have been blessed with pretty fantastic players, is it's never really been a problem with my players. It's more of the system really discourages player death, and it feels kind of hard to put it in a natural way, especially if people are used to 5e. I think. I've tried with like death and dismemberment tables. I even I use Adventure Conquer King stuff. And they have like anytime you go unconscious, you might lose an eye or an ear or nothing, right? And then anytime you get revived from the dead or have like a regenerate spell cast on you, you roll on the Tampering with Mortality table, and that can have anything from like you come back with like an extra sense for the undead to like you don't come back and cannot be revived to like they get 2 more tries to revive you, and if those both fail, you're gone for good. And I like that. That works for me.
it adds a
Yeah.
level of something else to it, where all of a sudden a 30-foot healing word as a bonus action doesn't just completely reverse everything. And
exactly. And you get you get reasons for characters to retire where it's like, like I see ghosts now, and like my brain isn't quite right, and I'm like addled enough from all of this reviving magic. I probably can't do many more of these.
Yeah.
And you get characters with, unique things like missing bits and whatnot. The mortality table, which is the only one we use, the tampering with mortality table, which is the only one we use on Wednesday, has less of like the permanent scarring and stuff. But it has lots of kind of like after effects of undeath or being dead on you. Forested said they usually bring back dead characters as angels or demons depending on their alignment in a surprise I'm here to help situation. Oh, I like that. Yeah, that could be a lot of fun. It's not something
cool.
It's not something I tend to do a lot of. In my world, if you worship a god, and you're at all worthy, chances are the god will take you as a supplicant, and you basically go live in their plane as a soul that provides divine power, and so that's like a form of paradise. And then if you're not claimed by a god, or you don't worship any of them, you end up in the line for reincarnation, basically, which takes thousands and thousands of years to get through to have your memories wiped to be reincarnated. So I tend less to bring them back, but you could super have like a communing with the Master of Supplicants. It didn't come up, but Lorelei was actually the person in charge of giving Lorelei her spell slots is the Master of Supplicants for Tulnir. But she actually ended up talking with the Keeper of Secrets instead because of the situation with the book falling more under his purview. But could super have that note of like being able to get a hold of a party member through the Master of Supplicants for a deity or something. It just hasn't come up yet.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Alex said, I think it's a good idea in general to not have to trust your players to create their own closure with the plead your case thing. Does really well by prompting them to process what's happening. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And just a quick comment on like Alex, what you're saying about how like sometimes you have a character that you have that you're like, okay, this is my character, this is how they'll do, this is how they react. It's finding that balance between so like you have a character and you build a framework, okay, and then you pour the story through that framework, and then depending on how that story falls, it would hit your things, and that's how your character would react to the story, and what comes out of it comes out of it. It's good to do that, and then I think the next level of that is being able to take your framework and like thinking of them more as like boulders in a river. Okay, I have a big thing here, but over time and how the story and how the situation around my character reacts, those boulders might move or shift or erode or change or get larger.
Yeah, super.
And how I would react to situations may differ.
Yeah,
based
totally.
on,
And that's like the ideal, at least in my mind. But it is
dynamic.
It's a super easy trap. Like I don't think I have any players, you included, myself included, when I play, who don't fall into the trap sometime of being like picking something where it's like, well, this is what my character would do, and there's like no other way you could see.
This is it, and this is the way it is.
Yeah. Forrest Druid said, me and my party have a problem where we don't really act as our characters, but as ourselves. Yeah, that's super. And it's a dynamic. Like, I think it's... I have like the theater kids I play with, with the people who I play with who have done a lot of theater and done a lot of that, I find like fall really well into thinking from their character's perspective. And then I've got some other people I play with who that's not really the mindset they operate in. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think the D&D is more entertaining from a viewer perspective and from a DM perspective when people do like think from their character, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just kind of a natural bent, or a certain practice some people have that makes that more natural or less natural, and you can play good D&D with either.
And there's nothing right or wrong about it. It's just getting to a point where you can. I'm sitting as the player at the table in my player space, and my character's on the table as my character space, and I can sit here in the limited omniscient fourth person behind the wall, and like I know this, and my character's still going to do this, and this is how it is, and regardless of how I may feel about it, my character's happy because he doesn't know about the guy in the other room with the crossbow.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Forston said it's really hard, actually. We always forget that our character is lawful good and we're burning down a village. Stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah, and Alex says you can absolutely play D&D more like an interactive board game if that's what your table is. Yeah, exactly.
However you want to do it.
Yeah, for like stream specifically, that is like one of my requirements for getting people to play with us is that they don't do that because, like I said, I think it's more entertaining, and we are intending to be entertaining. But when you're like sitting down at one of our casual games and playing with your friends, like there's not a right or wrong way to do that.
Yeah, there's only a way to do it, and the way that someone does it will dictate if other people will sit at the table and do it with them. So it's like if you're finding you're in a situation where you're at a table and no one else is there, then maybe it's time to look in for yourself. If you're playing D&D in a way and you find that there's lots of people around you laughing and having a great time, then you're probably doing it great.
Yeah.
Like you're probably succeeding at whatever you're trying to do.
Do we want to talk about that next, or do we want to go on to one of our other conversations?
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit.
I don't know. That sounds like a trap to me. I think we're just gonna. Me and Danny have been kicked out of a game together before for just stealing a little too much limelight from like a quiet group. That was a big learning moment for me as a player. I don't know if we need to tell ourselves repeatedly that much though.
Yeah,
but
I guess the note there is like learning when to have your moment, and then learning when to pull back and just I sit at the table with my beer and let other people have their time.
Well, I think to me it's really like groups have a certain you get a certain existence about the group that is more than just like all of the people in it. And like me and you and that one specifically, I don't think we're a good fit. Like it was 4 very quiet players with like a more reserved DM, and then me and Danny, new to the group, like not part of the existing friend group, and boisterous as could be, and like riffing off of each other, and
it didn't work out.
It's not the group for you, and that does. Yeah. It's not a bad thing. It's just like you might not mesh with what's going on there, yeah. Sometimes it can be a little embarrassing when you have to get asked to leave, but it happens.
And it is what it is, right? Exactly. Like it's there's nothing wrong with finding. I'm spoiled, and I play at very very. I play at D&D tables that have a wealth of lore and role playing, and I would say that I play at a higher. What's the word I'm looking for? That's I play at a table that has a lot of dynamic stuff to it. So I've tried to play a lot of other D&D, and I've had tables and places that just don't fit what I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. So I've backed out, or I've had groups where it's like if the group is a quieter group and I feel like I'm constantly holding back to let other people shine, then I'm like, you know what, that's okay. This isn't the space for me. Exactly. So don't ever feel bad about moving on because of something like that.
Yeah, and like that could be it. Like you could be sitting there like just pleased as Peach to be quiet, and that it's not your like kind of natural to go to, but you're really liking the group, you're liking what's going on, and that like to make this work to you both kind of get your say and have to mesh with the thing, right? Is like you're pleased with that, and it might be like, yeah, I could, and or I could find a group that's a little louder, and I'm gonna have more fun. Like you pick whatever's right for you.
How's our chat?
Nothing new yet. We still got the last one from Alex there. What was the next thing we wanted to talk about?
So I think something I wanted to talk about was building player characters versus NPCs, and talk a little bit about optimization versus non-optimization, and just some of our thoughts on it, because I've been recently thinking about running a lot of one shots and putting them together, and I think I've got a point on it that serves me now about it, where it doesn't put me in a space of one or the other.
Okay, lay it on me.
So what I see about optimization, and when I say optimization, and a lot of people, I think when someone says that, they think of Munchkin, min, max, like grit gamer, like that kind of stuff. I will agree there is a separate category of somebody who plays a game to break it.
Yeah.
Who plays a game to summon woodland beings, cast 5 fairies, and cast polymorph for the entire party.
Yeah.
Right. Or people that use, like I cast my simulacrum to cast the wish spell 9,000 times. That I agree is not fun D&D. maybe in a unique setting on a one-shot, sure.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm talking about optimization. When I talk about optimization is every character in NPC has a teeter-totter. And you could put that teeter-totter completely flat, and that character would be okay at a bunch of things. And they would be a fairly balanced character. And then you can take a character, an NPC, and you can turn that teeter-totter one way or the other, and you can make them better at some things at the detriment of other things. And there's always a give and a take. There's always a feat instead of an ASI. There's always a level instead of another level in a class. And I think one of the things about building characters and NPCs is understanding that I'm making my character to be good at this. These 2 or 3 things that I'm going to be very good at are become my roles. And then it's up to me to let my failures allow opportunities for the people or other NPCs in my world or things like that to fill in so that other people can have their shot. Mm-hmm. And then just like communicating that. I think where optimization falls flat is when somebody doesn't communicate to another person about how they could fit in and work together. It's like somebody just sees the sharpshooter bowman or something that does 1 million damage, and they're like, wow, he does so much damage, he's so good. I'm like, yeah, but he also can't take a hit. Mm-hmm. Or he doesn't have any knowledge skills, or he can't, you know what I mean, he can't find his way through a force to save his life.
Right.
So it's there's more than just damage, and there's more than just skills, and there's more than just magic. There's so much to D&D that I think optimization allows for party. It allows for people to lean on each other. I'm good at this, but I'm bad at this. I help you here because you help me there, kind of thing, is the way that I look at it.
Mm-hmm. We have very different opinions on optimization, and I'm going to work hard that this doesn't turn into any sort of argument. I think that'll quickly become uninteresting if we're just back
for sure.
and forth and harping on things. I definitely think it's a spectrum. Like you talked about this idea, I think most people would call it a power gamer, of the person who is like, I find it, especially with newer characters who have like a rules mindset. This was definitely how I was when I started with the tabletop role-playing genre of like, I'm good at going through a rule book and finding ways to create more than the system intended, and it was like seemed super fun to like make the mad wizard who like just throws a whole wrench in the world, and I think you kind of outgrow that, but I think there's kind of this scale, the spectrum from like, you know, give me a wolf stat block to play, I don't care as long as it can talk, like, you know, I'll role play out of whatever I'm given, to like to the all the way on the other side that I was just mentioning. And then there's all sorts of colors in the middle, from like, I don't care at all about how my character works, that's not what it is for me, to like, I'm not trying to break the game, but I want to be really good at what I'm good at. And there's not a right or wrong way to play the game. There is stuff that works and doesn't work about all aspects of it. I think the best thing is not getting stuck with it. Alex said, yeah, you think a character with plus 50 to something will be fun until you actually play them. Yeah, that's a great example. We've played a lot of Fantasy Craft. You can get like 50 plus bonuses if you're willing to like one note your character on a single skill, and you know, that's great for 4 levels. And then it's really not. Forrest Druid said, fun fact about my group, we always create our characters without an arc, like they're here because fate says so, and our DM is very frustrated because she really likes her campaigns to intertwine with character arcs. Yeah, most of our character arcs was finished in our backstory. yeah that's a thing that happens. Part of that might just be like helping your players create their characters, but the point I'm getting to is there's like things that work and don't work about anywhere you end up on the spectrum. I think you have a really good point that like part of making that work on the like more powerful optimized side of that spectrum is like making it Because one of the things I've brought up a lot of times, and one of the problems I have with having a table mixed of people more on the optimized side and more on the roleplay side, is especially if they're a newer player and don't have a lot of experience with D&D, they're playing their class, they've got their 2 attacks, and they do like 10-15 damage an attack, and then this person right beside them gets 3 attacks and does like 30 to 40 damage an attack, and it just feels like your character's useless, especially if you don't have that like kind of broad exposure to D&D to know yourself without being told like what they had to give up to do that.
Yeah.
So I do think that conversation helps with that. I think my main problem is what makes for interesting D&D from the DM perspective, from my perspective, the way I run it, and I think more from like a viewer perspective, like with a stream like we have, is more of the character stuff and the people growing and the interactions and what develops out of things. And I find most of the people who lean towards optimization build characters, even if they're not intending to, from a like, ooh, I could make this really cool. Like I can do this to get smite, and then I'll be able to do this to get advantage, to get my sneak attack, and they build the character from like a mechanics perspective and then try to fit an interesting story around them. And I've found the most interesting characters to watch as a DM or as a viewer are built from what am I exploring with this character emotionally, and what am I exploring, like what sort of story am I living that I'm going to explore here and dive into. And when you make an optimized character and you lean more towards specific abilities and you're giving up a bit of like depth and broadness to it, you just have less room to explore that stuff in. Like they kind of like they fall into their role, and it's a fairly neat, fairly niche role, and you leave out a lot of areas to explore.
Oh, I can agree with that. I've played much more niche characters where
For sure.
they do the I do like having the more balanced, having more things to do. I would rather have more skills and more things to do than just be I'm the person who hits kind of thing. Sure, it's fun, like you said, for 4 levels. The thing I would say too is the way it was something I've done for characters is I don't even look at character class or anything when I'm making a character. I build a character concept, and I build a personality and a whole I build the framework for the character and what they are and what they might do and where they would come and like that things. And then I look and I say, okay, what mechanics would fit to this? And is it something I want to play? I think that helps.
Totally. Yeah.
Coming from like the concept to the mechanics instead of the mechanics and forcing the concept.
For sure. Yeah. Alex
I would much rather.
Oh, go ahead.
I'd much rather force mechanics to a concept, or like try to fit mechanics into a concept than vice versa.
Yeah. And there you kind of have the potential to abandon it if it's not going to work.
Exactly, right? And it feels much better to have a rounded, cool concept that has like character mechanics that fit into it than have mechanics that has a thinly skimmed character concept wrapped around it. Like,
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alex said, my optimizer brain has been tuned more to optimizing roleplay potential as of late. Forested said they'll be right back. See you soon.
Cool.
But yeah, that kind of touch. At least, like I said, there's not a wrong way to play it. But at least in the industry we're in, of the D&D, we want good D&D that's fun to watch. I definitely think turning that like optimizing tendency towards interesting characters, as opposed to the easy trap of getting kind of wrapped up in the mechanics and big numbers and lots of dice.
But when you say roleplay decisions, stuff like that, for example, that I was thinking of is like being able to make your character in a way that brings things to the other characters' games. So, spell scrolls, buffing your party, being able to create
like a pretty mechanical look at it.
No, but it's a different way than most people look at it. Like it's most people look at it. Okay, what can my class do for my class to affect me? Okay, now instead of looking at that, it's like, okay, I have this class, and this is the way I normally look at it. Now, obviously, I'm talking outside of role-playing a character concept is, what can my class bring? and how can my class affect the group around me, and increase the fun and happiness of the group around me, and make it a more fun experience for everyone.
Yeah.
How can I make my character make interactions in this world more fun?
Well, and I think the step beyond that, and you meant, if I can say that, and it can sound sort of like I'm invalidating that. Like you mentioned, you're talking about from a class perspective, not from a role play perspective. So, not to step past that and invalidate it. But one of the things me and Alex have talked about a lot that we've added to our role play in our games, beyond like what mechanically can I bring to the other characters, is we look for opportunities to draw out other characters' backstories, or draw them into making decisions or explaining themselves. Like one of the things I'm always looking for when I'm a player is there an opportunity for me to question this person about why they did what they did in character, which then gives them an opportunity to shine. Like, and I find that you'll have a bunch of people with really cool backstories, waiting for it to come out, but everybody's so interested in their own backstory that whenever your stuff comes out, it kind of gets brushed over, and it doesn't. You don't get to sit with it and like unwrap it. And so one of the really cool things you can do as a player, no matter what you're playing, is be interested in the other characters. You know, can you find a reason why your character would be like, why the hell did you do this, and interrogate them, and then they have the opportunity to like explain themselves, like showcase their character and how they make decisions in a like natural roleplay setting? Can you draw them into like having to make characters, and like you? Yeah. Everybody's doing that. Everyone gets to shine. And what's fun about that is when it's interesting to the people around you. And it's just the most natural way in the world to draw out characters.
Yeah. And you know the best part about that is you could just hand everybody a D20, not have a character sheet for anybody, and that can still happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Like that is a cool thing, and I want, like,
I think that's at least in my opinion, that's like the juice to D&D.
That is what it's having more table talk, having a world that interacts, and people that work with each other, instead of having 5 people that do individual things and they say they're in it. Totally promote that in every game, promote that with your friends, make it happen. Because here's the thing, you bring up a situation and you help one person in your party's backstory, all of a sudden you have other people that are always bringing up, and people hunt and people love to have things like that come up. If you start to be the first person in your group, that goes out of their way to make something like that happen, and be like a facilitator, all of a sudden you will find that the other people in your group will be making it happen, and it will be natural, and it won't feel forced, and it won't be all on you.
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily true in reality, that doing it will prompt other people to do it. I could very much see a world where one person is.
I think it's it's happened for me.
Yeah, it's possible. I find the
Optimism.
best way to the best way to guarantee that is just bring it up and be like, hey, I heard about this cool idea of like what makes D&D fun. And how you can like be that for other people, and I think that's the fail-safe way to bring that in. Okay, Alex said 2 things. One, a note on our last conversation, or earlier part of this conversation. Having more tools that can show up in interesting ways is more fun to watch than someone doing the same thing over and over again, even if it's a really cool one thing. And I would add, even if they're really good at that one thing.
Agreed.
I think that's an amazing summary of the idea there.
Agreed. It's finding. So let me preface that. It's finding the things in D&D that you can do well, in very many different ways. That's the cool stuff. And then also having the things where it's like, sometimes the funnest part of D&D as well is, great, I have to make that charisma check and I have a -2. And rolled a 4.
Yeah.
Okay. How do we deal with, now I roll, now the guard doesn't believe me.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many different aspects to it.
Yeah, it's not all about high rolls. And I think where that comes up the most, and I know me and Alex have had this conversation, and that's kind of where this conversation comes from, is the idea of multi-classed characters versus mono-classed characters, or more closely mono-classed characters. In that, like, you miss out on a bunch of high-level abilities to get a bunch of like mid-range to low-range stuff that make you really narrowly good at one thing. So if you think about it, like if I give up on 9th level spells or 8th level spells to get better at like getting through wards or something. Like who knows what I'm statting into to get better at a specific thing I want to be good at. 8th level spells are more than just powerful spells. They are versatile. Like teleport totally changes the game. There's so many things you can do with that spell. There's so many spells at 8th and 9th level that like not having access to just gives you less options. Not even like makes you less good at specific things, like gives you less ability to like put together cool shit. And then Alex said, I'd even say they don't have to be good at them. I've had lots of fun with characters that are really bad at specific things. Yeah, that was what Dan was mentioning. And then Forrest had said, it's really interesting when I see people making character from scratch in a sense that they don't use the class, race, subclass, or background as the foundation, because that's what me and my group do. And Forrest had said, I agree having a minus ability store can be fun. It can give a very interesting and funny situation. Yes, totally.
Something I found... Forrest, this is to you too, and I'm totally all about that. Like if you say you went into D&D Beyond and you started off class, race, and you built your character through that works. It is definitely fun. The thing I found because I've made a lot of characters that I've made 1% characters I've played and 99% characters I'll never play. What I've found is that I get forced into certain archetypes, and I end up that I start using the same things all the time. And then if I click things around, I find I just end up in you end up in certain things unless you try to go anti-meta, and then you end up with weird things. The thing I like that I was mentioning to Isaac that I think is a cool way, and it's not the right way or the wrong way. Build a ball of flesh. Build a character like a personality and a concept and everything, and then just put it onto what you want it to work. And if it doesn't work out, then find a different mechanic.
Yeah, build the class, race, and stuff around it. And if not possible, scrap and start over.
Exactly. And you know what? And even if you're like, okay, so my guy is a shadow assassin, and you know what? I really want to play a Dragonborn, but a Dragonborn just doesn't fit it. Play a different race, like because sometimes you might end up in a situation where you end up playing a race that you would have never normally played.
Mm-hmm. Alex said it requires more experience to make characters without the helpful building blocks, but it can help you rank for certain stuff. I think that's a really good point we're missing.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of this comes from like we've played a lot of D&D and we've
made a lot of characters.
There's definitely like a level of experience that facilitates this. So I think a lot of what we're saying does speak to people who are very proficient in making characters.
Something to bring that up, Forrest, is if you're interested, something I've thought about doing is like a live character build with fans of the channel.
Yeah.
And like having polls and like basically showing like how I come up with a concept and go through it and then like give you choices like, okay, here's some things that I think would work for this. Boom, boom, boom. You guys vote. Mm-hmm. Like if that's something you'd be interested in, I'm very interested in doing that and kind of giving you guys an inside view on how I would build a character and how it would come together with something that is flavorful, feels fun, feels like it could make sense, and feels like it's going to live past combat and a skill challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is something we've talked about doing. It'll probably happen at least once, and we'll see how well it goes.
Yeah.
So we're at 5:58. We got 2 minutes left to the hour. I do think we should keep it to an hour. I think that's a good idea for our first run through on this.
So
I guess we want to jump into with our last 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes?
I have a final question then. You can ask me this as well.
Sure.
What right now is your and recently, because I don't need to get, but what right now is your favorite thing about D&D?
I'm in like a kind of unprecedented like experimentation in D&D right now. Like I found Adventure Conquer King. I found which is based off of like 1st and 2nd edition. And so I've been like, how can I fit this like 1st, 2nd edition like more real feel into my games? Where character choices like can really affect the world, and still run good D&D that doesn't get too crunchy. So that whole exploration of that, which is very multifaceted, is what I'm most excited about D&D right now, for sure. Where that's coming up specifically right at the moment is in like how much to pay attention to rules in my campaign. And magic items. We were talking about this yesterday. I've got this idea of making like a list for each area that I have campaigns going on into of what rare to legendary magic items are there, and it'll be quite a small list, who owns them, and it'll be something just like kind of widely known that I will give to my players that they would know about it, and have it be less of like, ooh, we're level 16, we should start finding legendary magic items in our loot now, or it's like, no, like you probably never will find them just by accident, except on very rare occasions. Like if you want those, you know what they are, you know who has them, you have to go get them. And then having like having high tier magic items be very rare and very special, and lower tier magic items more common in my world, which right now I keep a very tight grip on magic. So I'm changing that quite drastically if I do implement this.
That's awesome.
All right, that takes us to 6. So
whoa! You gotta ask me.
Oh, I do. Yeah, that's right. So, Danny, what's got you most excited about D&D right now?
So what's got me most excited about D&D right now, I would say, is that I love where I'm at as a player. I'm very, very much enjoying my D&D that I'm playing. And what I've decided is that the things that I'm not currently exploring, the things that I want to do and stuff that aren't happening, or that, you know what I mean, is I'm going to start, I'm excited to start exploring other parts of D&D in one-shots. I don't know if I'm looking at doing a campaign, but I'm definitely looking at building and trying a lot of different things in one shot. So that's kind of outside of my playing coming up here. That's going to be my next 6 months to a year, is lots of one shots and exploring concepts that I've had for years and years and years that I've just never, like, I have encounters in my head built from 10 years ago. So
very cool.
It's going to be cool.
Yeah, it's going to be
fun. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, you know, we hit affiliate. Feel free, if you want to support the channel, feel free to subscribe. Helps us out.
Yeah, if you got Amazon Prime, you can do that without
free.
it costing you any more money.
Yep. And we have
says bye. Hey, thanks for coming. Goodbye.
Thank you. Yeah.
I don't know if you're following the channel. Oh, you are now. Yeah, they followed.
Okay,
thanks for the
sweet.
Follow, Forrest.
Yeah,
Very
and then we have
nice
our
to meet you.
TikTok
Welcome
and
to
our
the family.
YouTube there as well if you missed some episodes from before. And once again, we so tomorrow me and Alex are doing a game, just old school game time stream where we're playing some old God of War 1, and we actually have some really cool stuff coming up. Me and Alex are looking to play first person shooters and different types of games where he plays, we're going to use like different keybinds, and he's going to play like the jumping, aiming, moving, swinging, and I'm going to play all the like change items, use abilities. So we're basically going to play one character with 2 people, and so he's going to play the sighted part, I'm going to play the blind part. So I think it'll be fun.
Yeah. So
and then on Wednesdays,
don't know, and Forrest specifically because you're here, Danny is blind, so that's why they're doing the multi-character thing. And also, we never mentioned it specifically, but our main thing on this channel is we stream D&D every Wednesday, 6 to 10 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So that's what we'll be doing this Wednesday. If you want to come and hang out with us there, it's been very nice having you here.
Yeah, just check out our schedule.
Yeah. And thanks for showing up, folks. Thanks for chatting, Danny. It's been fun.
Awesome.
And that's us signing off.
Okay. Talk to you later, guys.